Hello and welcome back to the Nature of Education podcast. My name is Yvonne and today I will be talking you through a reflective tool that you can use if you find that you keep getting caught up in quite negative patterns of thought. So this is something that I was very well versed in myself. I used to think extremely negatively, mostly towards myself. I was very self-critical, very judgmental of myself, and I would spend so much time in my head overthinking just about everything. I was always ruminating on what other people might be thinking about me, on mistakes maybe I made, or stupid things that I said, or what I thought were stupid things that I said. And I spent a lot of my time stuck in my head, reinforcing these very negative ideas about myself. And a lot of the challenges that I experienced personally came from my mind. They came from what I was experiencing in my mind. On reflection now, I can see that a lot of it was also to do with nervous system dysregulation and emotional suppression, and they will also influence the mind. So that's why at Wolf Academy, we will look at all of those different areas. But for today, we're going to have a look at the mind and what we can do with the mind stuff. And then other episodes will cover those other aspects as well. For me, I really just wanted to take my mind out of my head, throw it as far away as I possibly could, and not have to deal with it anymore because I just found it so difficult. My thoughts were racing. They were very negative. They were always quick to jump in and judge me and put me down. And I just felt like there was no escape from it. I learned through my journey that that was not exactly the case, that I couldn't just chuck my brain out of my head, unfortunately. But what I learned was that it wasn't my mind that was the problem. It was how I was using my mind that was creating all of this anxiety within me, the stress, all the fears that I was having. And my mind was really exacerbating these things. But it wasn't the mind itself. It was how I was using it against myself as opposed to for myself. And one of the biggest changes that I made personally throughout my own recovery journey was to switch my mind from being like this inner bully basically to a built-in best friend. So I changed my whole tone of voice in my mind. I changed how I spoke to myself. I changed the things that I would say to myself. And that really changed my whole experience because it goes from what I've learned, thoughts, feelings, behaviors. So that means that our thoughts are going to influence how we feel. How we feel is going to influence how we behave, how we show up and act. And that goes round in a cycle. So if we want to create change in our patterns of feeling or our patterns of behavior, we can start at a thought level. We can also start with the behaviors will influence new thoughts, new feelings will influence new behaviors, and of course the new thoughts will influence new feelings. So any different part of the cycle can be interjected and changed. But I personally, from my own experience, I worked with the thoughts at a starting point, and that was the level I began working with. And over the years, I've done deeper work on my emotions and on my nervous system, because if we don't feel safe and secure within ourselves, we're going to have a more overactive mind. It's trying to protect us and preempt things, and it's very vigilant when we don't feel safe and okay in our own bodies. The same thing goes if we're avoiding a lot of emotions, we're distracting ourselves, we're suppressing and numbing out, then we might notice as well that we tend to live a lot more in our heads. So it is very much mind body, the holistic kind of approach that is going to really set us free on all levels. And today we'll start with the mind. So what I found with the mind was that it would be conjuring up a whole load of what I call stories. So one of the practices that I used was I'd start saying when I noticed these stories coming up, and that's where all change begins, is with awareness. So with noticing what am I saying to myself, was this line of the story I'm telling myself is. So I started learning to interrupt those patterns of thought and not let them run away with me and create all this anxiety, but I'd start to build awareness of what am I saying to myself in my head right now. And we can all do this at any stage. We have thousands of thoughts day in and day out, so you can probably catch a few in there and just notice, what am I saying to myself in my head there? Where's my mind going? Is it going into the past, worrying about things that have already happened? Is it anxious about the future? Is it worrying about what people are thinking? Where is my mind at right now? And what you might find helpful is to notice in your mind, or else write down, the story I'm telling myself is. What that does is it creates a bit of space between you and the mind, because you are not your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are the one experiencing them and observing them and noticing them. And when you create that bit of space, you start to give yourself the power to do something about them, to start to rewrite them as if you are the author of this inner experience, this inner narrative that you are experiencing every single day. So you might start to use that, the story I'm telling myself is, and that's a really helpful one to keep in mind. Something else, and the main thing I want to share with you today, is a tool called ABCD. Nice and easy to remember, and this will be a written exercise, but as you practice it, it's something that you can incorporate into your mind just by thinking through each of the letters to help you to rewrite the negative thoughts that you're having, so that you can start to expand your mind, creating new possibilities for yourself, new patterns of feeling and behaving, and really start to change that inner narrative from one that may be more akin to a bully to one that is more like a built-in best friend. So let's get started. So the A is when something happens and you notice that maybe you're feeling down in yourself and you might be feeling quite anxious or stressed. This is a reflective tool where you can start to journal and write down. A is for activating an event. So as you're writing down, you'll be like, what is it that set off all these thoughts? What is it that created this anxiety or stress within me? So it can be as simple as someone in my class gave me a dirty look, or I was left out at lunch, or the teacher gave out to me, or my peers seem to be whispering around me. Any of these things can be an activating event that creates something in our bodies. It could be I failed a test, or things like this that create anxiety or feelings of rejection or feelings of failure. Anything like that can be used as an example. So I'm going to use I failed my exam as an example that we can go through. So the activating event is I failed my exam. So that's A, activating event. What happened, basically? B then is beliefs. So that goes into the stories I started telling myself about that, and that'll tap into our beliefs, what we believe about what's happened. So a belief is simply something that we feel certain about. We have a feeling of certainty about something, that's usually something we believe in. They are not necessarily true. They might feel true, and we might have said them lots of times in our own mind to convince ourselves that they're true, but they are not necessarily true. We just feel quite certain about them. So beliefs that may come from I failed my exam could be I'm so stupid. Everyone else is better than me. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. Everyone's going to be so mad at me. I've let everyone down. All of these things can come from that one event. And I'd imagine you've been in similar situations where something's happened and then you notice this absolute storm of thoughts starts coming out with all these different stories of negativity just piling on top of you. And that can be very overwhelming. So the next part would be to write down all the stories that the mind comes up with about the activating event, all the negative things that it comes out with when this thing happens. So that would be B. C then is consequences. So what happens when we hear these thoughts kicking off? So what are the consequences of believing this thought? So if I believe that I'm so stupid, a consequence could be one, I feel bad about myself. So I might feel sad. I might feel upset with myself. I might feel disappointed. I might feel embarrassed or ashamed. Another consequence could be that I just stop trying. That if I believe that I'm stupid, I might not put any effort into something because I'm like, well, what's the point anyway? I'm just going to fail. I might disengage. I might stop listening and paying attention because I might believe there's something wrong with me, that I can't take that information in. I might feel more anxious when it comes up to more tests because if I believe I'm stupid, then I'm anticipating more failure and that's going to put me off. So I might actually notice more anxiety building up in my body, more stress, more discomfort coming up to these different things. So in C, and you can do this in columns, so you might do column for A, column for B, column for C, column for D. So in C, what you'd write down is all the consequences of believing those thoughts. The reason I am being intentional there with my language is these thoughts happen, but we don't actually have to believe them. There are consequences to believing them. Something happens when we pay attention to those thoughts and let them sound like they have some kind of authority. And we're like, yeah, you're right, I'm so stupid. And all of these consequences come up, but we don't actually have to believe our thoughts. And that's what we need to start remembering and realizing so that we can start to loosen their grip on us and shift them around and change them so that they work for us instead of being against us all the time. So that's C, you'll identify all the different consequences of believing these thoughts. And you might even feel them as you're writing them down in your body. You might start to notice the anxiety building up, or you feel stressed even thinking about all these things. So again, just even notice your experience of working through each of the letters and seeing what comes up for you and how the different parts land for you. And then we'll move on to D. So D then is dispute. And this is one of my favorites now, and it's something that I use so much during my recovery journey, was disputing these thoughts. Because like that, they sound so true. They sound so convincing. And for me personally, I went through an eating disorder where the eating disorder voice, and I separated it out and called that condition. So condition's voice was always telling me very negative stories. But they felt so true. It's like, you can't do this. People are thinking that. You're so this, you're so that. Like all this negativity about me. So dispute was one I used a lot to be like, hang on a second. Is that true? Is that really true? Can I absolutely know that that is the 100% truth? Is there any doubt in that? And what I learned to do was essentially put my thinking or my mind or the conditioned mind like as if it was on stand or on trial in a courtroom. And I was like, where's your evidence for that? Where are you getting that from? Is that absolutely true? Because so often these thoughts are being fueled by fear, and fear, another way of looking at it, is false evidence appearing real. It sounds so real. It's so convincing. It has our whole bodies involved in the process of being so afraid, but it's often built up on nothing. How many times have you been so afraid of something and then you went and did it and it was absolutely fine? How many times has your mind told you, I can't do that, people are going to think this, I'm going to get rejected, and then you went ahead and did it and it was well received, or it went way better than expected, or you actually felt grand after? Fear is full of nonsense, we'll say, and it is not a reliable source, right? So if we can put fear on trial or those thoughts on trial in a courtroom, we'll ask, is that true? What else could be true? And that's where we start to expand our mind into other possibilities of, well, hang on a second, what else could be true here? So I failed an exam. I'm telling myself I'm stupid. As a result of telling myself I'm stupid, I feel terrible about myself. I feel embarrassed, like I've let everyone down, like I'm never going to be able to take a test well again. But hang on a second. What else could be true? If I go back and dispute those beliefs, dispute those thoughts and work through them, well, maybe I'm not stupid. Maybe I just failed the exam this time. Maybe I actually didn't put in as much study as I could have. Maybe this subject just doesn't really land with me. Maybe this isn't my area of expertise. Maybe I can learn from what mistakes I did make and any answers that I did get wrong, and I can study those harder the next time. Maybe this exam does not define me. Maybe this has nothing to do with my intelligence at all. And we can start to really open up that there are so many other possibilities. And if there's so many other possibilities, then that one thought, I am stupid, cannot be the fundamental truth. That cannot be the only possibility. So we start to see, okay, there are other things that could be true here. And there's maybe that I'm going into what are called cognitive distortions. They're just like distorted ways of thinking that's very all or nothing. It's either I'm stupid or I'm smart. Instead of something in the middle that it's like, maybe this just isn't really my subject. And there's other things that I am much stronger in. Simple as. It doesn't have to be a part of my identity. I don't have to use this against myself, especially when I know the consequences are making me feel terrible about myself. I could choose something different. So in dispute, it's really about breaking down this belief and seeing what else there could be, really seeing that this is not the absolute truth. And even remembering that a belief doesn't have to be true. We just have to be certain of it. So we can use these beliefs as tools for ourselves to use to help us to feel better. Because if you imagine that I change that belief from I'm stupid to I can learn from this, I'm going to feel a bit better about myself. And then the consequence of that belief is going to be I am open to growing. I can learn. I'm not so hard on myself. I actually feel better within myself because I'm treating myself like a friend. I'm treating myself like how I would treat someone that I like or love and that I'm there for. And that's going to feel lighter for me. That's not going to create more anxiety in me. It's actually more likely to create more confidence in me and help me out through future challenges. So dispute is a really powerful one. And that's where we start to break down those beliefs and be like, hang on a second. Nah, not buying it. What else could be true here? Because a belief kind of works like a table. Like we've had this idea, that's the tabletop, and it's strengthened by these 4 legs of maybe different references that we've used or evidence that we use, like I failed this exam, so that must be true. And maybe other people have said things to us. And so this tabletop stands up on those legs. But what we can do here with section D is to start breaking down those legs and be like, nah, that has nothing to stand on. It's actually not true at all. And if for nothing else, it's not serving me. It's not making me feel good in myself. And I have a choice about which stories I tell myself, which stories I listen to, what I believe in. And that one doesn't have to be part of that. So I'm going to let that one go and reinforce a new idea. So create a new tabletop with this idea of I can learn from this. There's no failure. There's only feedback. I am intelligent in so many ways, and I can build that up by looking for evidence to support that. I can build that up by telling myself that on repeat, because what you repeat to yourself becomes more certain for you. You're going to believe in something the more you repeat it. It's like learning a new language. The more that you say it, the more fluent you become. The same works with your beliefs. So you can start using that to repeat it in your mind so it becomes firm in your immediate thoughts. So then if something like this happens again, if there's a similar activating event, your B then becomes, I can learn from this. That's okay. I'll be gentle with myself. God, I've just failed an exam. That doesn't feel great, but I'm here for myself. I can learn from this. I can grow. Consequences of that are going to be very different. And we don't even need D. We don't need to dispute anything then, because we have beliefs then and ways of thinking that are really serving us, supporting us, and helping us out. So I'd love to hear if you try this out. If you'd like a worksheet on this, you can message us over on Instagram at Wolf Academy IRL, and I'll send you on a PDF that you can work through and you can see the different columns. There's a little bit of extra information in there as well to help you to break it down. But this is a tool that's great for reflecting on when things happen, and you can see that maybe how you were thinking was contributing. This helps to really break it down and help you to change those beliefs then if a similar event occurs, and you start to set yourself free and build more confidence from rewriting the inner stories that are narrating your life experience. This is something that I've found to work and be really beneficial, and I've loads more ways that you can work with your mind. So do stay tuned, and I look forward to chatting to you in the next episode. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.